Good morning. Welcome to another segment of an unscripted moment. Today I want to talk a little bit about what's been happening in the country last week with that shooting, and recently we've been seeing a lot of that stuff, right? Spurs like gun debates. The anti-gun people come out of the woodwork, and then the pro-gun people come out of the woodwork, and it turns into this huge argument about gun rights. And of course there's factions that are looking to take that away, right, to end that, do away with the Second Amendment, or maybe not do away with it, but to control it and make it to the point where like it really doesn't exist, even though it still does. It'll exist on paper, but the freedom won't really be there. I think we're already kind of there anyway, like especially if you live in a state like this, or New York, Massachusetts. I'm sure there's others. That's in the region I'm in. So is there really still a Second Amendment? I mean, there is, but it's not like it was 100 years ago. So the school shooting, the school shootings that we're seeing, and a lot of this stuff, it really isn't a gun issue, although yeah, that ties in, but it's a good versus evil thing, right? So like, this isn't meant to be like a devotional Bible study or preaching or anything like that, but the Bible tells us that our adversary, the devil, roams the earth like a roaring lion, seeking whom he might devour. I'm sure that's not worded exactly, paraphrase a little bit, but that's the gist of it. So the devil's out there. He's trying to claim souls, and he's trying to consume good, for lack of better way to put it. So that's been happening since the Garden of Eden, right? When he stood over Eve's shoulder and said, did God really say not to eat that fruit? Like puts it in a question, right? And God, guess what? God did say not to eat the fruit. If Eve had listened to him, listened to God, and not eaten the fruit, there'd be no such thing as murder today, right? There'd be no sin. That was the birth of sin. So of course it snowballs over time, and you get what you got today. So it's really a good versus evil kind of scenario that we have in the world. And I want to focus on the good, at least if only just for a minute. But I think there's more good than there is evil. Of course, the good doesn't get reported in the news like the evil does, so you don't see it as much. But let's just look at the school shootings, right? Let's look at the one in Texas last week, or I'm sorry, Florida last week. The coach, there was a football coach, right? Reports say, like, reportedly threw himself in front of the gunfire to save some of the students, right? What about Newtown back in 2012, Sandy Hook? There was a young teacher, Victoria Soto, I believe her name was. I want to say she was a kindergarten teacher, but I'm not 100% sure of that. But I mean, it was an elementary school. It was kindergarten, first, second, whatever. She was, in the younger groups. I believe it was kindergarten, but I'm not 100% sure of that. She corralled all the kids in a closet and, again, put herself between the gunman and the kids when he entered the room. Of course, she got killed. So those people, are what we should be looking at in these incidences. Those people are the good in the world. They sacrifice themselves to save those kids, to protect those kids, whether they could or not. They gave up their own lives to do it, right? So you're always going to have a good versus evil. Unfortunately, we're always going to have that. And is guns like really the issue? You know, people say, well, you don't really need an AR-15 style rifle. That's true. You don't. We don't really need an AR-15 style rifle. But we have the freedom to own them, right? So I don't really need one, but if I want one, because I want to go with my friends out to the, my buddy owns 30 acres and we want to go out there to the field and shoot pumpkins, or shoot water balloons or shoot milk jugs or whatever, windows out of an old abandoned car that he drags out there. Should we be allowed to do that? Well, right now we have the freedom to do that, right? It's fun. It's a way to blow off steam. It's a recreation like any other recreation. When we can own those AR-15s, incidentally, I don't own an AR-15. I have a Mini 14. It kind of does the same thing, I believe. Whatever. There's people come on, oh no, because it's whatever. To me, it serves the same purpose. So, if I want to own an AR-15, should I be allowed to for those purposes? Of course. It's recreation. I can go my whole life and have that and never do anything bad with it. I can be responsible. Never let it fall into the hands of anybody that will. Right? We can look at that in a second too, like personal responsibility. So, why shouldn't I be allowed to have that? That's what freedom is. Because these anti-gun people, they'll say, well, look at these other countries that abolished firearms and they don't have any killings. Yeah, but at what cost, right? They don't have any freedoms either, really. They have some freedoms, but they don't have the freedoms we have. But we're going in that direction. So, I get in my flesh too and get upset at those people and say, well, if you like those countries so much, go live there. Don't turn this country into whatever country you're referring to. Well, look at so-and-so country. They don't have any, they got less than one killing a year or whatever. I don't even know whatever the statistics are these leftist knuckleheads come up with. And we should be more like them and ban guns. Why should we be more like them? If you like that, go live there. Don't turn this country into that. Don't take away our freedoms. Do we need to look at a solution to all this violence? Absolutely we do. And that's where I tie back to personal responsibility, right? Because with personal freedom comes personal responsibility. So, okay, yeah, you don't need an AR-15 style rifle, but you enjoy it, so you should be allowed to have it, as long as you don't do anything bad with it. Hey, I own a motorcycle. Do I need a motorcycle? No, I don't need a motorcycle. If I give the keys to my motorcycle to a friend of mine who has been drinking and does not have a motorcycle license, and he takes off and goes around a corner wide and doesn't negotiate the curve correctly, and goes off and into a group of people having a picnic and kills one or several, so then what happens, right? He's in trouble. What about me? What happens to me? Do I have responsibility for that? Why did you give the key to that guy if you knew he was drunk? Why did you give the key to that guy if you knew he didn't have a motorcycle license? Licensed to operate a motorcycle. Right, it's like a bartender. He serves someone beyond their capacity. They go out and kill somebody with their motor vehicle. That bartender has liability. That bar has liability. They have culpability. Their feet are gonna be held to the fire. Why did you serve him? Why, he was there 4 hours. You served him 8 drinks. Didn't you know he couldn't drive? So guess what? You're in the hot seat now too. So, with gun control, that's what gun control should be, right? Here's what gun control is. And then you get the conservatives, gun control is using 2 hands. Well, both sides can be a little ridiculous, if you ask me. But here's what gun control means. It means me owning a rifle, making sure that it's locked up. making sure that it's in a place where people, innocent people or even non-innocent people, can't get it. And we have to make choices with that personal responsibility. For instance, if my son or daughter has a history of mental illness, maybe I won't own that rifle. Because maybe I'm afraid that even though I have it locked up, they can find a way to get it. Because kids are pretty smart that way, right? So maybe I'll choose not to own it, even though it's my right to own it. But I'm allowing my personal responsibility to supersede my rights. Maybe if I have 6 kids under the age of 10 in the house, I'll choose not to own the rifle. Or I'll choose a different way to secure it, a better way to lock it up. Because somebody like the mother of the young man who did the killings in Sandy Hook in 2012, she had an AR-15 rifle. She knew her son had a history of mental illness, yet somehow she allowed him to get his hands on that rifle. So where's her culpability, right? Maybe she has the right to own the rifle. Maybe she should have put that right aside for the better good because of extenuating circumstances, like knowing that she's living in the house with a mentally unstable person, or found a better way to secure it. But that's where freedom comes in. It's not up to the government to come and tell her, hey, you can't own that rifle because of this. Because your son has, this mental illness, we're not going to allow you to own this rifle. No, don't take that freedom away from her. Just enforce and force a way on her to be responsible, right? It's like everything. Like, they take these freedoms away little by little. When cars were first invented, you didn't need a driver's license. And now, you do, right? When in the old days you could have a gun and travel, from state to state without permits, now you can't. What happens? The government takes these freedoms away slowly. But it needs to be up to us as individuals to be responsible for these things. And in doing so, then maybe we can keep the freedoms. So it's easy for these groups to say, well, we should just take away all AR-15 style rifles. Would that make the school violence go down? Well, then the pro-gun people want to say absolutely not, because people have been killing each other since the dawn of time, and Cain killed Abel with well, we don't know. The Bible just tells us he killed him, but guaranteed it wasn't with an AR-15 rifle. It's widely believed he used a club, although the Bible doesn't say that. I don't think, but I'm not a Bible scholar. But in any case, it doesn't matter. Murder has been happening since the dawn of time, right? So the pro-gun people will say, well, if there was no AR-15s, that kid would have still found a way to kill all those people. Then the anti-gun people say, yeah, but he wouldn't have been able to do it as quickly. If he had to use a single shot shotgun where you put one shell in at a time, he could have been stopped. And you know what? They're right? Like, the truth is, if there were no semi-automatic rifles, maybe a lot of this school violence would be lessened, or it would go down. But again, okay, same thing, we can say that with a lot of things, right? There's a lot of freedoms that we enjoy that if they didn't exist, there'd be less tragedy. What about boating accidents? If there were no boats, no one would ever get killed water skiing. So I know it's not the same thing, but it kind of is, right? It's like the analogy with the motorcycle. So I give my key to somebody who doesn't have a motorcycle license and is drunk, and he drives around a corner, never rode a motorcycle before, doesn't realize that driving in high speed around a corner isn't the same thing as it is with a car. He skids out and wipes out people having a picnic. If we didn't have any motorcycles, that would never happen, of course. So guess what? If everybody just lived inside a bubble in their home and worked on their computer to make their living and never interacted with other people and never left their house, there'd be a lot less violence. There'd be a lot less everything. Pollution, that's ridiculous, right? Of course it is. But taking away guns, even though, yes, maybe if you took away all semi-automatic guns, the violence would go down. But at what cost, right? Because you're taking away people's freedoms. You're taking away people's freedoms. Are those tragedies terrible things? Yes, they are. As a nation, do we need to find a way to, stop it? Yes, we do. And the easiest solution that all these anti-gun people jump to is take away all the guns. That's not the solution, because when you do that, you're taking away freedoms from thousands of people, probably tens or maybe even hundreds of thousands of people that want to have those guns and use them recreationally, like I said, to go into my friend's lot and shoot pumpkins, and should be allowed to, because they have no malice in their heart, and they can own that gun for 40 years and never ever shoot anybody with it. So why shouldn't they be allowed to do that? It's all the other convoluted stuff that comes in. It's all the other, how did this guy get the gun? Now in Florida, I don't really know. They say he bought the gun himself. So how could that be? We need to look at that. We need to look at how someone with these kind of backgrounds get these firearms. I live in Connecticut. I took my concealed carry permit. I had to have references, from people. I had to have, background checks with the FBI and law enforcement agencies, my local police department. It was a pretty extensive application process. You got to pass the safety part of it. So of course, the safety part of it, you could still be a murderous knucklehead and pass the safety. This guy, in Florida, how did he get it? How did he get a gun? I know with long guns it's different. There's not as much, red tape. You don't got to pass all these background tests and do all these things with law enforcement, and maybe you should have to. And the pro-gun people will say that's ridiculous. The NRA, we don't promote that. We're not for that. You know what? Too bad. Maybe that's the solution. Maybe controlling how these guns get bought and sold is the solution. Maybe they do need to be held more like handguns. And then, you know what? That could be an inconvenience for an honest, upright citizen like me who just wants to own one to go shoot pumpkins. That could be an inconvenience. And I can grumble about it with all the other Second Amendment people and say it's not right that they're making me do that. But if it helps save lives, then I gotta suck it up and deal with it, right? Because the truth and the solution is somewhere in the middle. Like always in life, the world is less black and white and more gray, right? So over here you have, the anti-gun people. Abolish all guns, take them all away. Over here you have the far, right conservative people that they just want to leave everything like it was in 1776. And I think I'd probably fall more into that category, but if I'm honest and I look at it objectively, it's not working, right? Because these knuckleheads are getting these guns and they're killing people. And so when the leftist knuckleheads say, if we take away all the guns, the violence levels will go down, I believe that's true. But I still don't believe it's the solution. Because as I said before, it goes down at what cost? It goes down at the loss of freedoms, which, this country's already eroding enough of our freedoms away. I don't think that's the solution. But I think something does need to be done about it. And I think part of that is holding people to the personal responsibility. Start going after these people. Like, and they may already be, right? I don't know, but like in Florida, like, who sold the guy that gun? If it was in fact his gun, if he took it from his mother, who didn't secure it correctly, like the guy in Newtown, then prosecute her, put her in jail. You know, let that be something for everybody to see, because that's how people learn and adapt, right? Well, look at her. She went to prison for 10 years because she let her son get his hands on a rifle. Guess what, honey? We better reevaluate the way we lock up our guns, because we don't want that to happen to us. You know, the guy in Florida, if he in fact did buy that rifle himself, the guy that sold it to him, maybe he needs to do a couple of years in jail. And then all the other gun sellers and gun shop owners will say, hey, look what happened to him. We better relook at the way we sell these guns. And some people will say, well, that's taking away freedoms too. Not really, because in the end you still have the freedom to have the gun. And you know what, if you're an honest person and you have a clean background and you want to own a rifle and you're not going to ever do anything bad with it, jumping through a few extra hoops to get it shouldn't really be a problem for you. And if it is, too bad, because this is the world we live in, so it needs to happen. So there's solutions that don't involve what each extreme side says. You know, there's a solution which doesn't involve taking away all the guns, and it doesn't involve just leave things the way they were in 1776 and that's just the way it's going to always be because that's our right and that's what it says in the Constitution. You know, the left makes the argument that the Constitution was made to be a malleable document. I think to a certain degree, right, that could be true. Maybe not in every case, but in the case of the Second Amendment, I probably take some flack for this because I know a lot of my viewers are Second Amendment people, and so am I, right? But maybe it does need to have some changes. Not to the right itself. The right to bear arms needs to be preserved. Right? The right to own these guns needs to be preserved. The malleability could come in the way they're distributed, the way they're sold, because guess what, in this world, in this day and age, their evil is taking a hold more than it did in 1776. You have a society that's broken down quite a bit further over the last 240 something years. So you need to change the way you hand out these guns, right? 1776, I don't know, but it probably was very easy to get a gun. You just walked into the general store and put your coins on the counter and they gave you the rifle and you walked away, they didn't even know who you were. And that worked. That doesn't work anymore, right? So I think that the debate is valid, but more often than not, you know, in the media and in content that we see on YouTube, it's either one side all the way to the extreme, either side all the way to the extreme, arguing their case. And really, I don't think either one of them has the solution. I think the solution's somewhere in the middle. You know, I don't want to see the Second Amendment freedom be erased. But on the other hand, there needs to be some changes to the way that these guns are becoming available to people. And again, and I know I said it before, and I probably a couple times, so I don't want to keep being redundant, I'll probably close quickly, but I think that it needs to come with the personal responsibility aspect. I think that people's feet need to be held to the fire. Parents, gun shop owners, I don't care who it is, everybody. If you own one of these rifles and you are an honest, upright citizen, God bless you. If you let that rifle fall into someone else's hands, God help you. And that's kind of the way we need to look at it. And I think that, like in the case of the young man in Newtown, his mom owned the rifle legally, from what I understand. There needs to be culpability for that. But, you know, I'll go back to the beginning and say, let's look at the good in all this. Let's look at those people who selflessly sacrificed themselves for these young people. Newtown, the coach in Florida, the teacher in Newtown, and I'm sure there's others, right? Because our adversary, the devil, is roaming this earth like a roaring lion, seeking whom he might devour. And it's basically a story of good versus evil. And it's a story that's been going on since the Garden of Eden. And it's not going to stop. And our society is eroding, and our morality is eroding, and the evil is becoming more prevalent and more intense. But also, that's all we see. We don't see the good side, really. So let's try to find the good. Let's try to focus on the good, because it's out there, and there's a lot of good people out there, and they deserve to hang on to their freedoms. Thanks for watching. God bless you.